If you do the math, you would have the first month's rent at $3,000 a month, and then if you had double that amount as a deposit, now that's $9,000 that someone has to come up with just to move in. California leads the nation in homelessness. In fact, they have 44 per 10,000 at the top of the list, not the place that you want to be number one in. So what Sacramento wants to do is to tackle this problem head on. And their solution, rent control. You might have heard of the new laws coming up for 2024 in regards to the deposit that landlords could charge and also the no-fault evictions. But rather than me explaining it, let CBS San Diego, because of news companies always have a better way of dramatizing it and interviewing people out in the streets. Let's see what they have to say.
California and San Diego in particular have some of the highest rents in the entire nation. And that, of course, translates to excessively high security deposits that would-be tenants have to come up with to secure an apartment. But this new law will cap that security deposit at 1 month's rent.
I think it's an excellent idea. I think it should be done. People living in San Diego need help.
Linda Vista resident Phyllis Sullivan is passionately in support of Assembly Bill 12, which beginning in July of 2024 will prohibit landlords from charging more than a month's rent as deposit. With the average rent for a one-bedroom in San Diego now at $2,400 according to Zillow, that deposit can now range from $4,800 to $7,200 or even more, often depending on your credit score.
Nobody has that big hunk of cash to lay down to get into an apartment, usually.
Now, anyone who's been in real estate school know that the current law, and of course this doesn't take place until July this year, the current law is that you could charge up to 2 months for an unfurnished rental and up to 3 months if it's a furnished rental. So if you can imagine, let's just make round numbers here, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath type of apartment in Orange County with laundry and 2 parking spaces, always at your disposal. That goes for about $3,000 a month. If you do the math, you would have the first month's rent at $3,000 a month, and then if you had double that amount as a deposit, now that's $9,000 that someone has to come up with just to move in. With gas prices, the prices of everything going up, that's a really tough pill to swallow, and I really empathize with those people. But now let's talk about, if you're in that situation, will landlords actually help you? So if you imagine someone goes in and applies, and the landlord sees that someone has shaky credit, doesn't have the best rental history, doesn't always pay on time, they figure, you know what, I'm going to insure myself by charging 2 months of rent now in order to insure myself, because of if they're late on rent or they even miss one payment, now I have 2 months padded, before I have to start the eviction process. And then that doesn't even talk about damages. So that's what they're doing right now in order to insure themselves. I think it's a little idealistic to think that this law is going to help. The law says that it does not apply to a natural person or LLC. They're exempt from this whole thing, and they can charge up to 2 months for a deposit. So if someone has 2 fourplexes, they could have up to 2 properties. And by the way, if they have 2 fourplexes for a total of 8 units, they can still charge up to 2 months of rent. That exemption does not apply if it's an active service member that's applying for the rental. Here's the other reason why I don't think it's going to help that much. Put yourselves in the shoes of the landlord. I usually, when I'm screening tenants, I usually encourage landlords to just pick the best because they got a big pool of renters, and then minimize your risk. Maybe even charge a little less in market rent because of now you have a big pool to choose from. What happens when landlords start getting almost to greedy levels and they're charging above market rent? Now you're getting almost like the bottom of the barrel. You're getting people with bankruptcies. You're getting people with very low credit scores, even evictions, maybe even some criminal history. Now, I'm not knocking that style of being a landlord. I know some people actually feel genuinely that they are helping people, and because of let's face it, there aren't too many people who will rent to those kind of people. So I'm glad there are those that are out there. But then they want to charge 2 months of rent, or sometimes I've heard of some even asking for under the table 3 months of rent. Now, what's going to happen if the law only allows them to charge 1 month of rent, and someone goes and applies and has that shaky credit, doesn't have that much in the bank, I'm afraid they're just going to move on to another applicant that is going to give them peace of mind. So that's the other way where I think it's idealistic. The other reason I don't think it's not going to really help is what we talked about earlier. It doesn't apply to a lot of landlords. There's still a lot of landlords where it's still their only rental property, or they don't have more than 2 out there. They don't have a corporation. Some of them don't even file it on their taxes. So unfortunately, that's a reality out there. The good news in Orange County, there's a lot of these apartment buildings going up, and then I'm seeing the rent very stabilized, especially for that studio to 2-bedroom type of price point. Unfortunately, the ones who aren't going to get any help are the ones where it's the people who want to rent houses. So if you're looking for a house, maybe 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, or even 4 bedrooms, there isn't much out there, and you're always going to have tough competition when you're trying to find that rental where you just want a backyard and you just want to hold yourself over to save for a down payment to buy something. So that's the unfortunate reality. Let me know what you think about these new laws. Again, I'm Edwin Balloy. Go to midriseliving.com for luxury rentals and condos for sale.